In this video, I want to give you kind of an overview of Microsoft Word. A lot of the commands and menu items will be somewhat similar kind of structure as we work with Excel and PowerPoint. So Microsoft Office uses the ribbon concept. So if you look along the top here, and this is of course on a PC, Mac is similar. You have your ribbon IDs, or the ribbon tabs I call them. And you'll notice as you click on them, you get some more commands underneath. It just makes it a little easier to work with. This is totally customizable on your own machine. You can customize this. You can create your own ribbons if you need. So if I go to Home, for instance, you'll notice that there are groups. So if we start on the left-hand side, there is the clipboard group, the font group, the paragraph group, styles, editing, voice, etc. Now, if I shrink my window a little bit, you will see that the ribbon shrinks, and then you still have the groups, but they will actually kind of like combine all of the items. So if I want to look for editing, I would click on editing, and then I have everything that I normally would have seen. So if I go back out to what I originally started with, you'll see that the editing group has find, replace, and select. So sometimes, depending on the size of your monitor, your computer, you may not see the full ribbon. In that regard, it might be something you may want to consider making your own ribbon with functions and commands you use a lot. So many of the groups, not all, but many of the groups also have this little icon here. I'm in the font group right now, and right down here in the lower right-hand corner is the More button, and you'll see that it says Font, and there's a little shortcut. Not all will have shortcuts, but many will. So if I click on this, and what that will do is open up a font dialog box. And many years ago, before Microsoft went to the ribbon concept, it was just, you basically used menu items, and then you pull down a menu as you use in other software. So in this instance, we have font, we have advanced tabs, and you can move between each other. So here we could change the font, the style, the size, all sorts of different things that you will find. I'm going to hit cancel here, that you could find within this font group, and other things that are not in this font group. So it takes a little bit of time sometimes to understand and really feel comfortable with the ribbons, but in the long run, I think it's a nice way of working with a variety of Microsoft products. If you hover over something, eventually, I got to click on that. If I hover over something, let's say the little A tool here, you'll see there's some little tool tips, and sometimes there might be a shortcut. So if I hover over the left line, you'll see that there is a shortcut, and this also tell you a little bit about what is going on as well. So that just gives you a little understanding of some of the ribbon. If we walk through, you'll see there are many other areas that you'll work with. Depending on your computer, you may or may not have the drawing or all the various tools that I have here. You may not have developer. It just really depends on your setup. Now, some items, and I'm going to double-click title. You'll notice that this little dialog box opens. At this point, I could then go here and I could change the font size. I could make it bold. I could change its color, make it kind of a purple. So if we go back here, and sometimes this doesn't always show up. Sometimes it shows up in the wrong spot where I'm trying to type here and it's right over your cursor. I think you hit escape, it'll go away. But if we look in the font group, we have the text color here. Not all of the menu items will have this, but the font color does, and you'll notice it's two parts. And so if I come over here and let's put in a new title, let's do a subhead, and I want that also to be purple. I can double click it, and so what I could do is I could either click on the left side, which is basically the last color to be used, which was that purple, or I can click on the little arrow to choose a color. So let's say I wanted it to be maybe a dark green, and you'll notice, let me choose something that's a little more obvious. Change there. There we go. So you'll notice that now the default color has changed to that light blue. So if I go over here to title and I double click just to select it, you can see it's right here. or up here in the font group, I can just click on the little A, and that brings back that last color. Sometimes what will happen is as you choose colors, it doesn't do it here, but sometimes they'll actually show up, the ones you've created. But we don't do that here. So you can use either item. Some have the double. You'll notice the highlight. So if I wanted to highlight this text and I wanted it to be yellow, I could just click the yellow, or you got to re-highlight it when you choose highlight. If I choose the down arrow, then I could choose another color, or I could just say no color. So that becomes helpful when you're trying to use something that was already created, or if you want to choose a list. Sometimes they're like, why isn't it showing up? So you may want to choose the down arrow. So some of these will have down arrows. You'll see the fill has a down arrow, so there's two parts to it. Paste, you'll see, since people do use paste a lot, it's above each other, so you see right down here below there would be some other options for paste, or you could just click the icon to do a copy or paste, depending on what you wanted to do there. One thing you can do, this is a multi-document or multi-page document. If I want to see what it looks like, one thing I would do, now your machine may not have this icon right here, the print preview and print. So there are some, this is the quick access, and I would really suggest clicking this little down arrow right here and adding a few of these items. If you do a lot of new documents, if you do a lot of opening, you're doing saving as default. So I've put a little check mark here in front of print preview and print. So this allows me to go and look at a preview before I print it. You want to be careful with quick print, because if I push that, it'll go right to my printer. It doesn't give me any options to see how many pages it is or whatnot. So here I can just select that. A later video I may talk about more commands, but you could add almost any command here that you would want. In my Excel, when I show that to you later in the semester, the session, I have added a lot of things up here that I use a lot. Let's say you don't use the undo, or you don't use the save. You have auto save on. I have it off right now, so you don't need that. It'll save it automatically. So you could maybe remove that if you needed more spots here. So if I click this print preview and print, you will see that it'll show me my document. Down here at the bottom, there's 1 of 3. If I just use my little scroll wheel on my mouse, I can go to 2 of 3 and 3 of 3, so I can go back and forth and to see what it's going to look like. You can then choose the type of printer you have. If you have multiple printers, you can have it. My printer does allow me to do multiple printing on both sides, which is kind of nice. You can do all sorts of other options here, setups for your print. If I want to get out of here, I just hit the escape key, or you could just click the back button here. One thing you may want to be aware of is down at the very, very bottom, there's options, and you can explore these. These are the actual settings of Word. You can look through all of these. I wouldn't, unless you really know what you're looking for, I wouldn't make too many changes with these. So I'm going to hit cancel. And that does take us then out of the print preview. So I go back to print preview. If I hit this little arrow here or the escape key on my keyboard, it would bring me back to the original document. If I go to layout, this has some things you may need to work with. If I want to change the margins, by default, Word has 1 inch all the way around, so top, bottom, left, and right. If you want things a little narrower, you want them a little tighter, wider, you can choose those. You also can go down here to custom margins. Maybe you're printing this on one side and you want to have enough room so you can do 3-hole punch. Maybe you increase the left margin to maybe 1.3, or you can type in like 1.25 if you want. And you'll see over here on the left-hand side, once I click OK, it changes it over. Older versions of Word actually did have the default left and right margins at 1 1/4. So I can go back just by clicking normal. I think 1 inch should be sufficient for what you're doing. We can do orientation. You can do some columns. There's a lot of things that you just explore as you work through these. So that gives you a little bit of an understanding of what the ribbon does. If you are kind of limited on space and you're not doing a lot of work with the ribbon, on any of the tabs, if you go over to the right-hand side and find an open spot and you just right-click your mouse button, it's going to go off here. So let me, I have a screen set just a certain size. Let me try this. There we go. So you could hide the quick access toolbar at the top. You could collapse the ribbon. And so what would happen is if you needed to use any items in the ribbon, you would just go, let's say layout, for instance. I click layout and it would open up. So that would give you a little bit of room if you have a laptop with a smaller display. To bring it back, you just click on an item, right click, and see where it says collapse the ribbon, little check mark there. All you gotta do is remove that check mark and then they'll stay up. So depending on what you're doing, if you don't want folks to see, let's say you're presenting in PowerPoint or Excel or even in Word and you don't want people to see the ribbon and you want to have more real estate, then you may want to hide that. It doesn't do it permanently. I mean, it'll do it until you turn it off, but it doesn't mean you have to reinstall or anything like that. So that gives you a little bit of a basic working with Word. You'll see that your page is WYSIWYG. So as you bring in graphics and you change the font, things will automatically repaginate. And if I just scroll through my document, I can see where the page breaks are. If I wanted to put in, let's say a page number, I can go to the insert and I can go over here. You have a header or footer. There'll be some assignments. You'll be doing this later. Or I can go over here to page number and I can tell it, okay, bottom of the page, let it draw, and I want it on the center. And then if I scroll down, you'll see there's the page thing. You'll notice that I could go here and I could change the font if I wanted. Let's say I make it a little bit smaller, just so it's not so evident. Maybe I put a little line across the top and go over here and say, hey, give me a top border. So kind of like separate that. So then if I go back to print preview, you'll see that on each page, you'll see those page numbers. So it gives you a little bit of an understanding of what Word can do. So thank you for listening.